Urban Squeeze.
Squeeze indeed. Today, though, well, I'm not sure why entirely yet that I've been asked to consider this kind of behaviour.
I'm working the silicone sealer now. The glass tube is maintaining an airtight penetration. Just about through. This is the tricky part. Okay, I'm in. Now I can pop the cork against the edge of the dish. Cork's out. Neon gas giving me the vacuum. It's working. I have an environmental exchange in the bomb cavity. The dish is empty. Removing the tube, dumping the phosphorus. Okay, Carol. It's your turn.
She had to do the same thing, poor old Carol. MacGyver? Really? Associate Professor Jason Byrne with me. Normally Dr Tony Matthews here too, but he's overseas at the moment, so I welcome Dr Natalie Osborne instead. Hello.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. MacGyver fan yourself, Natalie, are you?
You know, not so much, but the general ideas behind it, that spirit of creativity.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely a big fan of that.
It lives on through something called urban hacktivism. What is urban hacktivism?
Wow, that's something that Natalie and I have been cooking up, actually, Matt.
Is it yours?
Yeah, and we had an enraged activist, like a cyber hacker, who was stalking me on Twitter for daring to coin this phrase.
Really?
But we're thinking about hacktivism in response, and I can't take full credit for this by any stretch, but we're looking at hacktivism as a response to the kind of standard planning process where many citizens feel locked out of planning, like they can't participate. They see a big development go up next to them and they think, well, how do I get a chance to have my say? And hacktivism really is a kind of response where citizens are getting together and finding their own way around, like MacGyver would, right? How's a workaround here? How can I use lucky bands and chewing gum and defuse the bomb? And this is a development bomb in this case, right?
Yes.
And so they're doing things like appropriating bus shelters and putting up their own white paper over the top of an advertising shelter, like advertising sign on a bus shelter, and then writing their own community announcements, right? So taking back that space.
Okay.
Natalie, what's your take?
Yeah, so the tools of urban hacktivists, not so much corks and paper clips, but more leftover pallets and milk crates, things being repurposed and made into things for the urban landscape and just kind of left there for one another. So things like, okay, there's a park where there's not much street furniture and people would like to sit there, so people are just making their own and putting it in there.
Yeah.
Things like deciding we need more urban greenery and actually just getting out there with a shovel and some seedlings and planting up your verge, or some secret guerrilla gardening in your local park.
So kind of clever in a way because, when we're not in any way trying to encourage people to break rules or anything this afternoon.
Be clear on that.
Just to be perfectly clear, before the phones do ring up, we are not encouraging people to circumvent the rules, but the fact of the matter is that this stuff does happen. It is happening.
Right.
It's fascinating in a sense as well. I mean, people growing their own vegetables out on the curb as well. Their own herb gardens popping up here, there and everywhere, just using space because it's there. And the authorities, well, do they turn a blind eye ultimately?
Sometimes, and it gets bigger too, right? This stuff scales up. So there was a case in Los Angeles where there was a freeway exit and a group of people were constantly lobbying to get a sign on this freeway exit so they didn't miss it, and the authorities not doing anything. So I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but The urban story goes that the community artist and some friends got together and worked out the correct font and the correct colour for the sign and this kind of stuff, and got in their garb and went up and put up a new freeway exit sign, right? They hacked it themselves. And then the Department of Transport went, actually, that's a great idea, thanks.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I'm pondering the rainbow fence on the way down to Byron. That's where you head down. So someone at some point in time has just gone, rainbow colours.
Right.
And it sort of speaks Byron, doesn't it?
And there's cases in Tokyo where local residents have petitioned for a very long time for crosswalks, and the crosswalks haven't materialised, and then they've just gone out one night and marked up the crosswalk and painted it on themselves, and it gets adopted. So, there's these kind of workarounds, but the authorities sometimes don't know, sometimes turn a blind eye right now.
And sometimes it becomes policy. So as we've seen just recently, Brisbane City Council made verge gardens okay. Now that's acceptable, and that was after years of sort of residents doing it anyway, and then council waiting until a certain number of complaints came in and then chasing it up. But they were kind of reluctant. You know, who wants to tell a granny she has to dig up her rosemary and her lavender?
Tommies that she shows a lot of pride in.
Yeah, that's it. And now it's just been adopted as policy. You know, it's shown that it works. It's not causing anyone any harm. It's a really good idea, and so now it's a thing. We can do it now.
91.7 ABC Gold Coast Urban Squeeze. Associate Professor Jason Byrne with me, as well as Dr Natalie Osborne, both from the School of Environment at Griffith University, talking urban hacktivism, phrases you never thought you'd say on radio. But it's a thing. It's a thing. Perhaps you've seen an example of it near where you live. There was an example just down here not long ago. We were talking about pineapples in the medium strip. Jason.
We were, Matt, and that was a classic example of a landscape architect at the time who lived on the Gold Coast getting really irate about the fact that this median strip had been neglected and ignored for so long. Council and main roads fighting over whose responsibility it was, and he thought, damn it, I'm going to get out there and plant some stuff.
I'm going to MacGyver this thing.
Right, you MacGyver it.
What do people need to be wary of, though? I mean, when does this sort of go too far?
There's certainly public liability issues. So I remember we were talking on this show about not wanting to eat those pineapples, for example, because they might contain cadmium or lead or heavy metals or all kinds of stuff, right? Then there's issues around whether you're breaking the law itself right now. I mean, you've got some insights into this. You've been doing a bit of work recently around mobilising. And
yeah, absolutely. Really cautious. I don't want to be charged with inciting in any way. But yeah, look,
not in the current climate, Natalie, if you don't mind.
I think there's some grey areas, but I think probably the really important thing when we're considering this is that I guess the spirit of urban hacktivism is filling a hole that's been left by kind of mainstream planning practice. And if we're going to fill that hole and we're going to do it ethically, then we need to be doing it in a way that's driven by, I think, consensus and collaboration. So rather than just going out and doing something on your own, I think it's about talking to your neighbours, talking to the people you live with, talking to existing sort of groups, residents associations, NGOs, as well as, you know, give your local councillor a call. You might be surprised what they'd be keen to do if they felt they had the energy and support behind them. So I think making connections is a really good way to start and perhaps a good way to protect yourself as well.
Authorities, it sounds like such a harsh word, are councils and the like genuinely receptive to ideas from elsewhere? Does that in some way, shape or form make life easier for them?
Oh yeah, look, yes and no, I suppose. I think there's probably lots of individual planners and public servants and councillors who are keen for some fresh ideas and anyone who's got a bit of passion to make things happen at the local level. But we do have structures in place that can unfortunately restrict those kinds of activities and then unfortunately can actually discourage people from getting involved in planning, which is a little bit sad and something that I think a lot of people get frustrated by.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Matt, have you heard of World Parking Day?
No.
So the idea here is it's kind of a form of tactical urbanism is what it's called. Sounds great,
tactical
doesn't it?
Urbanism.
We got the best words.
Like Steven Seagal's about to fly through the roof or something.
MacGyvering it with some tactical urbanism. So Parking Day started off in San Francisco, and what it's about is reclaiming some of that road space. Oftentimes, you know, you might look at a strip like in Palm Beach or Burleigh, lots of traffic around, kind of cars have taken over our city. How can we reclaim some of that? So the parklet movement creates a small little temporary space out of a parking lot, maybe some AstroTurf, some milk crate benches, some activities like a chessboard, that kind of stuff, like a big chessboard, and outside a cafe or bring your own coffee, that kind of stuff, and reclaim that space. And it started out as one of these kind of guerrilla activist movements, but now it's become an international movement. And the Gold Coast City Council recently this year has been kind of working with the community on identifying spaces where this might work. And you've had some experience again in this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, this is one of those fun things that started off as only technically legal, but technically legal nonetheless, because the people who were occupying these parking spots were paying for the park. You know, they'd feed the meter.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, surely we've got as much right as a parked car to be here and enjoy this space, right? And yeah, we're starting to see councils pick it up as a way to experiment with different visions of what urban space was like. I participated earlier this year. It's every September if people are keen to start planning ahead for next year. And we hosted a collaborative design session on what we thought a public square might look like in that space, and talked to a lot of people about how we could make, just more interesting and lively public spaces in and around our suburbs and neighbourhoods.
I'm thinking of Palm Beach and little bits of sort of timber, I don't know what you'd call them, like a platform that are now jutting out and sort of forming. I think they're public space, but outside a couple of cafe businesses. Is that the sort of thing we're talking about?
It can start as small as that and scale up. It can even be a phone booth, right? So there have been some examples where people have repurposed public phone booths recently and had a kind of community library. So books that people don't want anymore, let's get a drill and some wood and that kind of stuff and make a little kind of thing that can fit over the top of the phone booth without disrupting the activity. And then underneath is this public free library. You can go and exchange books.
Just like an honour system.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right? And it's brilliant. It really brings people together, and it really starts to change that sense of, and this is what the right to the city's right about, Nat, where it's that sense of this is only public space, this is private space, you're not allowed to go here, you can't use that, to how can we get the community involved, right?
Yeah, and how we can build connections with one another. I think, many people find that we're, I guess, increasingly lonely or increasingly locked into our houses and our jobs, but we don't spend a great deal of time outside with one another, enjoying our public spaces and enjoying one another's company. Yeah,
the great myth of social media as a linker, when in fact there's not that physical interaction between people.
I mean, the great thing about social media, I think, in this context is that it can be used to bring all these people together who are keen to try something, but then it's about, we've got to actually get out there into these spaces and meet each other and get together.
Have like a real conversation.
Have like a real conversation. No emoticons, just actual emotions.
And you bring the paint, you bring the drill, I'll have the ute, let's get the stuff in. Who's in charge of plants?
We'll knock it together. We'll knock something together.
Yeah, that's it.
Dr Natalie Osborne with me, together with Associate Professor Jason Byrne from Griffith University, Urban Squeeze. How does the Gold Coast go in this space?
Getting there. It's always my answer, isn't it? I have to be polite, and it's true, we're getting there. So if you look at the Chinatown in Southport, for example, council's working really hard with local businesses there to think about how those alleys, those sort of leftover little alleys, might be used more constructively. Beginning to talk about encouraging street art, which is a really good example, or constructively using some of those leftover bits of dirt, getting some plants in there, some creepers, greening that space, really getting the restaurateurs and the people who visit to reclaim that space as something that could be active and useful. But it takes time, right, again, that. I mean, it's something you have to cultivate. Yeah,
it takes time and it takes relationship building. It's not the kind of thing that you can do on your own. And I think, unfortunately, if you try to do something just on your own, it's really easy to burn out or find yourself in trouble or find yourself not really knowing how to move forward. So it takes a while to build the kind of networks that these great hacktivist responses rely on.
Hacktivism.
I
love it.
And Toowoomba started this way.
Toowoomba?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a fabulous urban street art scene in Toowoomba now. And it started by a couple of local gallery owners getting together with some disadvantaged kids and other people and beginning to rethink urban space. And it's known now around Australia and internationally for this amazing street art scene. And they've got cafes now spilling out into these alleyways, Melbourne sort of style, but beautiful and real urban hacks.
Yeah, and this was absolutely grassroots driven.
Yeah. Amazing. Bring a bit of MacGyver to where you live. Go on. You can do it. Guys, thank you for coming in.
Thank you
Good
very
to
much,
see
Matt.
you, Jason, and welcome.
Thank you.
Well
My
done.
pleasure.
We'll have you back
me back
anytime. Dr Natalie Osborne, both from the School of Environment at Griffith University, experts in MacGyvering stuff. Terrible theme song. However, you get the idea. Do it yourself. Take control of your urban environment. More Urban Squeeze, same time next week.